Do you love movies? So do I. What's up, y'all? It's KB, and I love movies, inviting you to listen to The Conversation, a film podcast where passion meets perspective and opinion. From the old school to the new, I invite a guest on to discuss the movies that thrill us, challenge us, break our hearts, or even blow our minds. There's always new episodes dropping wherever you get your podcasts. So join the conversation. We don't just watch movies. We love talking about them too. The Conversation with KB Loves Movies, a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hey, this is Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast, a show that forces a guest to come up with a movie-themed top 5 list topic, and then we reveal our picks on air. Top 5 heist films, top 5 tearjerkers, top 5 movie dogs. Every show you'll be asking yourself, what would be on my list? Guests include directors, screenwriters, actors, podcasters, musicians, authors, and even a professional wrestler. Subscribe to the Force 5 podcast, and you won't just be a listener, you'll be a list nerd. The Force 5 podcast, available wherever you're listening now.
Welcome to Wake Up Heavy, my weird dad's weird podcast about weird movies.
Welcome to another exciting episode of Wake Up Heavy Recollections of Horror. This is Mark, and this is episode 3 for the Women in Horror Month special series. And today I'm going to be talking about the genre films of Mia Farrow. Growing up, I mainly knew Farrow from her roles in Woody Allen films, and there are a number of those. She worked with Allen almost exclusively for a good decade or so, and the only other one that I really had any awareness of was Rosemary's Baby, outside of his au revoir. Rosemary's Baby is probably my second most watched film behind The Thing, and it may eclipse it at some point. It's a movie that I throw on quite regularly. I owned it on VHS for a number of years, used to rent it all the time. I really don't remember the first time I watched it, and I'll get more into this when we do the episode for Wake Up Heavy. It's a movie that over the last 5 or 6 years, I have really taken a strong liking to, even if it's just as background while I'm working at home. There was a week, I think, sometime within the last couple of years, where I watched it 2 times in one day, and then each successive day after that, like for 3 days in a row. And I finally broke down and bought the book around that time. I had always heard how close the movie followed the book, and it does. And again, this is something that we can go more in depth with, but it took almost as long to read the book as it does to watch the movie. It is one of the most faithful adaptations of a book, and it works perfectly as a book and as a movie. So an odd little film, a perfect film, and again, I will discuss that more in detail in a full episode about it, and my kind of definition of a perfect film. There aren't many out there, or there aren't many that I consider perfect films, but Rosemary's Baby is definitely one of them. And prior to Rosemary's Baby, Mia Farrow hadn't done a whole lot. She had done some modeling when she was younger, and she had, I think, maybe a half dozen roles prior to Rosemary's Baby, but this was the one that kind of launched her career. And it's most definitely my favorite satanic cult movie, and top 5 horror movies of all time, for sure. That same year, 1968, another oddball movie from her came out called Secret Ceremony, and this was directed by Joseph Losey, who was more known for film noir and hot boilers, spy movies, action movies. This movie Secret Ceremony co-stars Elizabeth Taylor, and I know I've mentioned this in a number of episodes in reference to those hysterical women movies that I love, and they've both lost people close to them. Mia Farrow has lost a daughter.
That doesn't sound right.
I mean, Elizabeth Taylor has lost a daughter, and Mia Farrow's mother has died, and they kind of take on those roles for each other, yet there's a weird sexual vibe between them as well. Robert Mitchum plays Farrow's stepfather, and it is insinuated that he is sexually attracted to her as well. It's not so much a horror movie, it's more of a psychological thriller, but with the madness of the both of them, it falls into that hysterical women category for me. And I think I've watched it. This is a movie that I hadn't heard of up until a couple years ago when it played on TCM, and I've watched it twice since discovering it on that channel, and I think both times through them. But it is an interesting kind of late Liz Taylor movie, still early Mia Farrow movie. And like I mentioned one of the last episodes, it would make a great triple feature with Night Watch starring Elizabeth Taylor and The Haunting of Julia starring Mia Farrow. You got a nice little trio of hysterical women films or gaslighting films. About 3 years later, in 1971, Farrow was in See No Evil, also known as Blind Terror, directed by Richard Fleischer, who had a very long and very varied career. I know him from Soylent Green, 10 Rillington Place, which is an interesting true story about there's been a couple. There's actually, I think, a miniseries with Tim Roth playing the same character, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he had a flat in London, and he rented rooms to people and murdered them. And this was, I think, the first depiction of that on film. And he also directed a pretty fun... I actually like this movie. I know it got a lot of crap when it came out, and this was during the whole 3D. Everything was 3D, so if you had a trilogy or a third part of a series, it was in 3D. Amityville 3D, which is really weird and kind of amazing. So Fleischer also directed that. See No Evil is a movie I had heard about kind of vaguely, and I had seen pictures of it over the years with Mia Farrow, a little bit longer hair than in Rosemary's Baby, and she plays a young lady who is blind because of a horse riding accident, and she has come home, I think, to recover, and then is going to go back to London or something and become a therapist. But it's sort of a home invasion movie, although not really, because we don't actually see the home invasion part. But it is a woman in peril movie. And when I read the description, the first thing that came to my mind was Wait Until Dark with Audrey Hepburn and creepy Alan Arkin. And it's not really all that similar to that movie, other than the lead female characters being blind. I don't care too terribly much for home invasion movies. I watch a bunch of them, and I think I mentioned this early on in that favorite subgenre episode. And this home invasion is not one of my favorite subgenres, but this, I really liked it, and I think it was because most of that frustrating stuff was left out. And it's that frustrating stuff that drives these movies forward usually. And by that I mean when people do really stupid things, or, there's always a kind of a catch in these movies where the characters have to act stupid so that the story can progress. And I guess with having a blind lead, we kind of eliminate the need for that. And there is a whole stretch of, 10 or 15 minutes where the audience is aware of what has happened in the house, and Mia Farrow's character is not. And that is the kind of tension that I enjoy feeling with, because it doesn't have that level of frustration with it. Like, oh, why did she do that? She does everything right in the movie. All of the characters make smart choices throughout. And even when we have kind of a case of mistaken identity as to who the killer is, because we don't see the killer except for his fancy cowboy boots with stars on them, we don't see who it is until basically the last scene. And of course, there's an assumption at one point of who the killer is, and we've got this kind of xenophobia going on with gypsies that live nearby. And that is handled much more differently than most of these home invasion movies. So I really appreciated the difference there. Now, it does make it a little less interesting in a way to have that stress and that tension and that frustration missing. But I really like this film. And just to note, I was so ready to rent this to be able to, because it was a movie that I hadn't seen, that I sort of missed out on, even when I was doing the research for this episode, what little research I did, and was going to rent it for the episode. And I discovered while I was searching for it through my Fire TV stick that it was actually available on an app called Pluto TV. And it is a free TV and movie service. I had never heard of it before. I downloaded the app onto my Fire Stick and was able to watch the movie for free. So if you have an app or a device like that, it's probably the same through Roku. If Pluto TV is available to you, download it and you can watch See No Evil for free. Thus ends my public service announcement for the day. And next, in 1977, one of my favorite movies, The Haunting of Julia, also known as Full Circle. And this one is tough to track down. Shudder had it at some point last year, and I think I watched it twice. It had been on Netflix years ago, and I realized I found kind of like an old link to it, and I had started the movie and stopped it, and I'm not sure why.
That doesn't sound right.
It's a little slow, but it is one of the better, in my opinion, hysterical women movies. And it stars Keir Dullea, who I have discussed in relation to Black Christmas. And he plays kind of the same sort of character as he does in Black Christmas, kind of an asshole. It made me think of that movie, and then Bunny Lake is Missing, which is a movie I've caught a couple times. And that is another good example of a not hysterical woman, but one of those gaslighting situations. A little 1960-something film from Britain, and I can't remember the name of the gal that's in it, but that's a pretty good movie. I've caught that a couple times on TCM. But anyway, Keir Dullea and Mia Farrow are married. They lose their daughter. This is pre-Heimlich maneuver days, and so their daughter chokes on a piece of apple, and Mia Farrow spends some time in an asylum. She gets released and decides to live on her own and starts having visions of a dead girl who once lived in the house that she now lives in. And this has got the hysterical women. It has got a seance scene, which I love in movies, whether they end up being done realistically or as cheap sideshows. Throw in a seance and I'm there. Heredity.
That doesn't sound right.
Oh, I'm glad I caught that, because that is what everybody calls it Heredity. I've always been good about calling it Hereditary, and of course, here on tape, I have screwed up. Hereditary has kind of a seance scene in it. Of course, the Ouija series of movies, the first one and then part 2, which is a better movie, has a bunch, and I just love them. I love the trickery. I think this goes back to my fascination with Harry Houdini when I was a kid.
It's time for another tangent.
I mentioned on the Eraserhead episode that I was obsessed with the Elephant Man, and around that same time I had an obsession with Harry Houdini, and one of the things he did was go around the country and debunk palm readers and psychics, so I've always had kind of a strange fascination with that. But The Haunting of Julia has fast become one of my favorite movies. I wish it was more readily available. I think this is a movie that I would actually plunk down the dollars for to buy a DVD or Blu-ray of. The ending is really, really dark and depressing, but it's such a great movie. Based on a book by Peter Straub, actually, which I have never read, just called Julia. And if you're trying to track down the movie, look up both The Haunting of Julia and Full Circle. It appears as both. I think one is the British title and one is the American title. But again, it's not streaming anywhere. Hopefully it pops back up on Shudder soon. Check all those funky sites, though. If you have a Fire Stick or a Roku or something, it's a lot easier to find these movies. I had looked on Just Watch for See No Evil, and it didn't show up as streaming. And that's because they don't have the Pluto TV library in there. So anyway.
It's time for another tangent.
Oh, you know what? That made me think of something. There are a couple of free apps like Canopy and Hoopla that basically run through either your local library or if you have a university in town. And if you're a member of those, you can stream movies through this app for free, and Canopy has a really huge selection. I think they've got a lot of the Criterion movies. They get the A24 movies that I love. And if you are not a student or a faculty member for Canopy, if you go on a campus and sign in, you can generally watch them. I haven't done that yet, but I'm trying to get my friend who works at CSU Fresno here to sign up so that he and I can watch movies. But Hoopla usually runs through your county or city libraries, and again, ours doesn't have it. But take a look at those because you can watch stuff for free. And if you have a Roku or Fire Stick, then you can put those apps on there and watch movies that way. That is public service announcement number 2. And just so you know, the Projection Booth podcast has done a wonderful episode on The Haunting of Julia with guest Kayla Janice, as well as the director of the movie, Richard Longcrane, and the author of the book, Peter Straub. And you need to go listen to that immediately. And I guess I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention that Mia Farrow was in the 2006 remake of The Omen. And that is a movie that I've watched a couple of times. I don't have a serious beef, and I know this is something I mentioned before. I don't have a big beef with remakes if they're done well or done differently, or if the movie that they're remaking was kind of a dud before. But The Omen is a classic. The remake is okay. I don't care much for the actors in most of the roles. And I don't think that Mia Farrow even comes close to the gal that played Mrs. Baylock in the original as far as creepiness or spookiness or just downright kind of looking strange. But, if you want to fill out the whole Mia Farrow horror genre spectrum, then I guess you got to watch that one too. Oh, and I forgot to mention, in See No Evil, there are a couple of, not horror movie, but a couple of the actors, most of the people I was not familiar with, and then a couple of familiar faces popped up playing some of the gypsies. And one of them is the gal who plays the bar matron in American Werewolf in London at the Slaughtered Lamb. And then one of her sons was played by the character actor who played the night porter in Elephant Man, a character that I absolutely loathed after I saw that movie. Okay, so that brings me to the end of this third episode for Women in Horror Month. And next week, as per usual, I'm not sure exactly what I'll be talking about. I was planning on doing a Patreon episode of The Witch Who Came from the Sea, but I sat down to start it, and I didn't really care for the movie this second time watching it. Took notes and everything. It struck me as ugly this time when I watched it. Their characters they're not despicable, but even the main character is fairly grating, and I just don't know if I'm going to get to it, at least right now. It is an interesting movie. It has a lot of strange dialogue, quirky situations. The atmosphere it takes place in Santa Monica and Venice Beach, and it was virtually unrecognizable to me. But I just kind of came away with a not great feeling after watching it this second time, and I don't know that that's something that I want to sit down and talk about. Now, public service announcement number 3, and I posted this on, I think, Twitter and Instagram yesterday. After a false start a couple of weeks ago, The Reflecting Skin is now on Shudder, and you need to go watch it. It's a great little weirdo movie from 1991 that kind of disappeared for a long time. It hasn't had a good release on DVD or Blu-ray in years, and I'm kind of assuming when it shows up on streaming sites, it usually means that there's a new release. But it is an odd... I'm going to do an episode on it, so I don't want to say too much. But if for nothing else, you get to see a young Viggo Mortensen in one of his early starring roles. Really interesting. I'm trying to think. It reminds me of like Ray Bradbury stories. And then I'll kind of get... I don't want to say too much. Just if you've got Shudder, watch it. If you don't, get it and watch it. Who knows how long it'll be on there. It had shown up on my apps a couple of weeks ago, and I kept trying to play it, and it said not available in your country. So I'm not really sure what happened there with their interface, but it had apparently been available in Canada, and now it is available in the US. So get on it. It's a fantastic movie. Okay, thanks to Chris Reed for supplying new music, which I will begin and end with on this episode. And I think I used something new last time as well, and he keeps sending stuff and has offered to, after he gets, I don't know how many, maybe a dozen or so pieces, that this may be something that will be offered up to Patreon members. So another great reason to join. And then also to Brian Taylor for doing a quick logo for the Women in Horror Month series here that I'm throwing up on there with stills or images or poster art from the movies. Please subscribe, rate, and review Wake Up Heavy on iTunes. If you do nothing else, at least subscribe. And what that means is that when you are notified of a new episode and you log in, it will automatically download, and that downloading helps get the show into searches and suggestions. And again, other than taking up some space on your phone, it's not going to cost you anything, and you don't even have to spend the few minutes to rate and review, but it does help. So if nothing else, subscribe if you haven't already. And next week, the last episode for Women in Horror Month, who knows what it'll be? I don't. And I'm still tossing up the Patreon episode, and I will get something out on the Reflecting Skin soon, which will probably be available to everyone. So that is it. Thank you very much for listening, and don't forget to wake up heavy.